I want to thank my colleague, Senator Blumenthal, for organizing this floor block. Thank you very much, Senator, and it's an honor to be part of it. Most people cannot remember what health insurance was like before the Affordable Care Act. But do you remember when you would go out to buy a health insurance plan and they would say, you have any pre-existing conditions? Ever had a surgery? Ever had a broken bone? Any history of cancer? If so, we're going to exclude that coverage in your policy. So you ended up with a health insurance policy that cost a fortune and didn't cover many possibilities that also cost a fortune to be treated. There were many other aspects of health insurance in those days too. Do you know how much mental illness was covered by health insurance? Virtually none. Health insurance did not cover that. Mental illness. Do you know how that was added into Affordable Care Act? 2 senators, Paul Wellstone of Minnesota and Peter Domenici of New Mexico, insisted on a provision that said all health insurance plans will cover mental illness and addiction. Thank goodness they included those things, because addiction became a major problem across America with the opioid crisis. In addition, there was a question, what am I going to do with my kids who are going to college? Are they still covered by my family health insurance plan? And in most instances, the answer was no. Your child coming out of college, happy, looking forward to his great future, had no health insurance coverage if they couldn't find a job. We changed that. I think it goes to age 26 now for families that are still covered by the family plan. The things I've just described to you are considered common to health insurance plans. They were not before the Affordable Care Act. You know how many Republican votes there were for Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act in its day? None, not one. We passed it because we happened to have 60 votes in the Senate. I was one of them, proud of it. One of the most important things I ever voted on. And what have the Republicans been doing ever since? Trying to figure out a way to rescind the Affordable Care Act and all the protections I just mentioned. They want to go back to the good old days when you couldn't buy health insurance coverage, couldn't afford it, when a lot of things that families deal with on a regular basis just weren't covered by health insurance. They tried in Trump's first term, and I remember it, and I'll bet you do too, Senator. John McCain of Arizona was a deciding vote, and it was 2:30 in the morning, and he walked into the well of the Senate, stood there, and couldn't raise his arm because he had it broken when he was a POW, but he got it up a little bit and he voted no. And his vote saved Affordable Care Act from Trump in his first term trying to get rid of it. Now they're back again. And this time they're assaulting the cost of health insurance premiums for families. And that's why this gathering on the floor is so important and so timely. All across the United States, families in Illinois and Connecticut and other states are getting notices of the new premiums as of the first of the year. And it's stunning. I'll talk about a few of them that I found in my state of Illinois. This issue of affordability is on the minds of my constituents. You talk about the cost of living, you talk about inflation, you talk about budget, hold on to your hats. The next time you go to the mailbox, there may be a notice, if you're one of the 500,000 people in Illinois on the Affordable Care Act, of the increases in premiums the first of the year. Last week, we learned from the Department of Insurance in Illinois that Illinois residents can expect to see a nearly 80% average cost increase for their Affordable Care Act health plans. 80%, virtually doubling it. That's in the northern part of the state, tripling it in the southern part of the state, tripling your current health insurance premiums. Why? Because Republicans in Congress refuse to sit down with any Democrats and negotiate an extension of a crucial policy that helps tens of millions of Americans afford their health insurance. Since last week's announcement of the 2026 insurance premiums, I've gotten regular soundings from my constituents. Karen lives in the suburbs of Chicago, and she wrote to me and said, I am in absolute disbelief about the increase in my ACA insurance plan. And as I mentioned, 500,000 people in my state currently are covered by these plans. She writes, I worked hard all my life and can't believe they'll not be able, at age 62, to afford to go from $565 a month to $1,600 a month for health insurance, triple the amount she's currently paying. Karen concluded with this heartbreaking note. Please fight for those of us who will lose access to health insurance. I have a young grandchild and another one on the way. I want to be able to see them grow. She's not alone. Families in Illinois will pay an additional $2,500 on average for their health insurance next year. That's an extra $200 a month. But for some, especially in rural areas, it may triple instead of double. Families in Jackson County, now that's in deep southern Illinois. That's where you find Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. Families in Jackson County will see their monthly premiums increase from $122 a month to $458 a month. That's $4,000 more per year for health insurance premiums. And that isn't all. Families in Effingham County, which is a little bit north of Jackson County, will see their monthly premiums increase from $185 a month to a staggering $1,000 plus a month, an annual increase of $10,000 for families living in these small towns. It's not just the families in my state that are going to struggle. I look to Missouri. I grew up in East St. Louis across the river from that state, and people there are asking the same questions. Can I afford health insurance anymore? In Missouri, 383,000 people rely on ACA's enhanced premium tax credits to afford their health insurance. I don't know why the Republican senators from Missouri aren't coming to the floor to join the Democrats protesting what's going to happen to health insurance in their state. If Congress does not extend the credits that were not renewed under the big, beautiful Trump budget plan, the people in Missouri will have to pay 70% more for their insurance next year. A Missouri couple in their 60s with household income of $85,000 has to pay an extra $23,000 a year for health insurance, from $7,225 a year now to $30,000 next year. Think of that, $30,000. It's just unimaginable, more than $2,000 a month in premiums. A Missouri newspaper stated, quote, an individual with an income of $62,000 a year, and that's not a wealthy person, are going to have to pay full premium if the enhanced credits are not extended. That means paying $9,000 over a year for the average plan instead of $5,321. It's an increase of 70%. How can families do this? They're struggling to get by buying groceries, the utility bills are going through the roof, and now comes this added expense. Price increases this magnitude will cause millions to lose their health insurance. I asked the Director of Insurance in Illinois, of the 500,000 who have affordable care plans in our state, a fourth of farmers in our state, for example, they have it, and half of the shopkeepers in our state. How many do you think will drop their insurance when they read these new premiums in the next few days that are coming across in their mailboxes? She said 30 to 40% will give up their insurance. What does that mean? Well, for the family, it's a tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy for fear that they're going to have some serious illness. For medical providers, it means that sick people will still show up at the emergency room and in the hospital. They just won't be insured, and they won't be able to pay these hospitals, some of which will fail as a result. Our state is anticipating anywhere from 160,000 to 275,000 Illinoisans will lose health insurance because the premiums are going through the roof. This is what the government shutdown is all about. What we are saying to the Republicans, join us in a bipartisan effort to provide relief for these families that are going to pay these higher premiums in Illinois and in Missouri and all across the United States. And as it turns out, if you're just looking to the raw politics of the situation, there are more families from states that Trump carried running for president than states that he didn't carry who are affected by this. And yet, silence from the Republican side of the aisle. Hundreds of thousands of Illinoisans go to bed each night knowing that they're one illness or one accident away from heartbreak and financial ruin for their families. I can't understand the indifference on the other side. Listen to what Bruce of Quincy, Illinois wrote to me. He said, I can no longer pay for my health insurance. It went from $361 a month to $1,770 a month, from $361 to $1,770. He said, I'm a cancer survivor and a retired disabled professional firefighter. I just don't know what I'm going to do. How long are we going to have to wait to provide help for Bruce and others? There are millions of people like those who have written to me and those, I'm sure, who will learn to their surprise that they are also victims of this. This is something that we ought to agree on, for goodness sakes. Everybody needs the protection of health insurance and the peace of mind. To think that families will be forced to drop it because of our inaction on Capitol Hill is inexcusable. Thanks again to the senator from Connecticut for drawing us all together. I yield the floor.